And we are live with the pre-show of today's Network Plus study group. Hey, everybody. Thanks for joining us a little bit early. We are here to do Network Plus today. So I am in the midst of getting everything working. We got recordings going. Let's put the lower third up. That way you'll know how to put your digital pin in our virtual pin cushion. That's the one right here. Hello, everyone. Malk, you got into the chat early today. Good to see you. Hope things are going well. As you can tell, there's quite a bit of activity out in the Atlantic. We're watching it as well. Hope things are going well with you guys. I have ordered extra supplies just to be on the safe side. It is that time of the year after all. Oh, for those of you that don't live on the eastern part of the United States, it's hurricane season. And it's busy out there right now. Let's see if I can go to the National Hurricane Center. Let's have a look at what they have to say. There we go. Folks checking in from everywhere on the chat. Thanks for being here, everybody. We're going to get started in just a few minutes. So the National Hurricane Center. I haven't been here since they updated their chart. They've got high definition now. Look at all that. Fancy. We'll put me up. Let's put me down here. Fancy. So look, there's already something out there. You've got this red one. Now, come on, it's heading straight for you. What in the world? This is not good. Come on. We don't want to do that. So this needs to go like south of you. It needs to like dive. It needs to, or go way north. We need to get a fish storm. And then there's one right behind it. What is going on? Still far away, of course. These are the things you plan for. They say this one's going to have an 80% chance of cyclone formation in 7 days. So, are we used to hurricanes? Oh yeah, it's the normal thing for us now. That's what we do. Why did I put myself up twice? That's what we do. It's just how it works here. How it's happening. Folks checking in from all over the place. Southern California is here. North Central Montana. Boy, you're up there. North Central, that's what in the world? You got a lot going on up there. That's a good place to be, by the way. That's got to be awesome. Folks checking in from Pines Boulevard. Thank you for being here. Pines and Flamingo. Heading over to the mall. We got a lot going on here. Tallahassee checking in. Tennessee Street, North Monroe. Get some of that action going on. Folks checking in from Victoria, British Columbia. Beautiful area. I have flown in there as well. Enjoyed that. Hey, Texas, thanks for being here. We're doing all Network Plus today. I have all new Network Plus content. I love the Network Plus study group. They're so much fun. Network is sort of where I cut my teeth in technology. That's where it really picked up for me. Is I saw the network, I looked at the packets, and I realized, oh, there's some good stuff happening here. So a lot of fun. Folks checking in from Fort Worth, Texas, Jamaica, South Africa. Thanks for being here. And just around the corner in Claremont. How do you like that? We got South Africa and Claremont. We got way over there and then next door. That's how it works. Tampa as well. Hello, Tampa. Good to see you guys too. We're all in this together. Thanks for checking in. And Tampa's a big place too. Tampa's got all those there's a bunch of municipalities in the Tampa area. So we always say if you're going to St. Pete, sometime you just say you're going to Tampa. Going over to Tampa. Once you get there, of course, you have to be very specific or else you won't know where to go. There's a lot going on there. Hello, Alabama. Birmingham is here checking in. So that's kind of fun. Let's get rid of the hurricane. I don't want to see that anymore. No. No more of that. We'll have to see. Folks checking in from Pennsylvania, your Network Plus test is next week. Well, hopefully this will give you a little bit of a positive study time for you. There's folks in CA, but the way it's abbreviated, I'm not sure if that's Canada or if that's California or if it's, where else could it be? It could be somewhere else. Nolans, thanks for being here. Thanks for checking in. Well, we got a lot to go through today. It's been super busy here. There's always something going on. We have been busy putting together more and more and more things. And next on this list, I am done today with the live stream. I have more study materials to work on. I'm always working on something behind the scenes. And indeed, today I've already been working on something. We stopped for this, and then I'm going to go back and do that. So never a dull moment to make that happen. Hello, Cincinnati, Ohio, land of WKRP. This is always a good study group. I think because it's sort of it's the middle ground between A+ and Security+, and we sort of have this little niche that has such a detailed perspective of networking that we don't get in the others. I think that's why I like it so much. I think that's why I enjoy doing this one so much. Oh, okay. Well, I think the summer can't finish up soon enough here in Central Florida. It is just horribly warm outside. The afternoon storms. It's just a normal thing now in the summer. You get storms in the afternoon. So when we're finally out of that cycle, it's so refreshing. You can actually go out in the afternoon. It's not oppressive, which is pretty much what summers are in Central Florida and South Florida. It's just crazy. So I'm glad that's coming to an end. That also means back to school, and there's, then we're in the last half of the year. So all that is very interesting as well. We got, people checking in from everywhere. Just got a scattered group of dots on the screen. If you have a look at our check-in screen. And that's the URL that we're going to be using today, not only to put your digital pin in our pin cushion, but it's also the URL we will use to answer questions today. So if you're able to get in and put your pin into our pin cushion, just stay on that screen. Don't go away. Leave it right there, and then it will update automatically as we do the Q&A today, which is kind of fun. We've also got this set up so you don't even have to type that in if you don't want to. You just go to professormesser.com/live. That's got the video, the chat, and the Q&A, the Vevox Q&A from that. So it's always something. It's always a lot of fun. I've been challenged every time I try to get this done. Earlier this month, the chat box on the web page, they changed the code, and I had to modify my code as well. So we had to deal with that. And then today I could not get the stream to start. It would not begin. I got everything set up. We got everything ready to go here. We sit down, we click the button to start, and we got a black screen. Nothing. Zero. Donut. Like, okay, well, let's stop it and let's start it again. Nope. Wait, that was supposed to fix everything. You turn it off and you turn it back on again, which was really my next step was going to be power down my streaming server and then power it back up again. But I just refused to do that for some reason, because I just assumed that if I do something exactly the same way the second time, that it will have a different outcome. And in this case, it did, which I'm not sure what that says, but it did have a different outcome. I stopped it. I think I might have done something else. I might have confirmed some of the API parameters, make sure that I had the right channel information, et cetera, et cetera. I don't know why that would have been different. It wasn't. It said go again, and it worked. So I didn't touch anything. I just was happy that it occurred, and here we are. Because now we're about to start, and it's when it's 10 minutes before, and you're wondering, is this going to start up? Because sometimes it doesn't actually work so well. Well, with that, looks like I filibustered all the way until 12 noon, which, by the way, is the start time for what we are doing. So I guess it would be a good idea if we actually did that. To make that happen, I need a green light here, green button on this screen. Yep, we got it. Green button, we'll hit the green button, things happen, et cetera, et cetera. I think it's time for a live stream, everybody. Why don't we do a study group? Here we go. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the August 2026 Professor Messer N10-009 Network Plus Study Group. This is the study group where I ask you questions that come directly from the CompTIA exam objectives, and we get to see just how much you might know about the Network Plus exam objectives. Now, that's just our first hour. In the second hour, I'm going to be taking questions from you, and you can submit those questions to me at any time in that second hour. We would love for you to join us there in that second hour. It's the time when I can answer questions that you have asked. We sort of turn this around. I ask the questions in the first hour. You ask the questions in the second hour. Got it? It's that easy. Remember that we have a live Q&A going on here, not just the live chat, but we also allow you to answer the questions live if you happen to be here when we're doing one of these live streams. So if you are here live, has the little live box in it. It's 12 noon on a Wednesday, the 12th. I have to think about where I am and what I'm doing. You can, of course, pop open a new browser window and head over to the URL that you see on your screen, professormesser.com/QA. That is the link you need to go to because the questions that we will ask will be in that particular window. You probably even have it up already. The first question I ask on the study group is actually a question you may have seen before. We refer to this as our rewind question because I want to see if everybody's able to log in. They're able to put up on the screen the question and the answers. You're able to select an answer. So this is a question from last month. We're going to see how well you remember this one. I will remind everyone who is watching, though, and is here live, please do not put any answers in the chat room. Please don't put any hints into the chat room. The question this month for our rewind is, when performing the power budget calculation for a long-distance fiber run, which of the following must be subtracted from the transmitter's power output? Would it be the switch's total PoE capacity? Would it be the wavelength of the light? Would it be the current SFP wattage draw? Would it be losses from connections and splices? Or would it be the number of VLANs assigned to the link? It's got to be one of those, right? Now, if you think you know the answer, please no answers in the chat room. Instead, you want to use the link that is on your screen, professormesser.com/QA, to lock in your answer. And we will come back to that question in just a moment. Well, you might have even seen something. Oh, did you see what went by? We got a little sneak peek at what was going on. There is a lot that we're going to go through. Speaking of sneak peeks, there's a lot that happens here when the cameras are off, and we'd love for you to join us over on our YouTube channel, which is where we have our entire Network Plus training course, every minute of every video, along with replays of all of our previous study groups. So we have new questions in every study group. There's always something new to learn every month. We also are available on our social media sites. You can get a weekly Network Plus pop quiz question on X, on Instagram, on Facebook, on LinkedIn. We'll email it to you. There's lots of ways to do this, and we'd love for you to join us there as well. Wherever you happen to be, we want to be there as right there alongside you. And of course, we have our Discord available as well at professormesser.com/Discord. Today, all of our questions and everything we're going to be talking about come directly from the current version of the Network Plus exam. This is the N10-009. It's an exam that was released on June the 20th of 2024, which means we estimate the retirement date for this exam to be somewhere around the fourth calendar quarter of 2027. So the end of the year in 2027. The exam itself is a single exam. That makes it a little bit easier. You'll get 90 minutes to answer a total of what could potentially be 90 questions. Might be fewer than that as well. The score that you're shooting for is on a scale from 100 to 900. Already kind of weird, but that's how they score it. The score you're looking for is a 720. That's what you want to score to earn your Network Plus certification. The exam itself consists of both multiple choice questions and performance-based questions. So there's a lot to talk about. We will do both of these kinds of questions today. So you'll get a little bit of a feel for what is expected of you on this exam. Of course, we have a lot more than just our free video course. We have downloadable course notes. We have downloadable video and audio files. We have our exam hacks ebook. There's so much more available on our website. If you'd like to learn more, you can find that at professormesser.com/netsuccess. We have a replay of this live stream available immediately afterwards on YouTube. And we also have a audio-only version that we distribute in podcast form. You can add this to your favorite podcast listening program. So if you happen to be someone who is working towards adding this, you want to add it into your list of different podcasts that you listen to, follow that link on your screen. Go to professormesser.com/podcast. You can add our A+, our Network Plus, or our Security Plus study groups from that link. So a good way to figure out what you're able to watch or listen to in ways that make sense for wherever you happen to be. Sometimes it's nice to have that automatically downloaded in your podcast list, and it's just there whenever you'd like to listen to it. We also have, if you look at our YouTube channel, our YouTube video description of this video, you'll notice about a day after we're done, there will be timestamps in this list that match everything that we happen to do today. I would like to think that I already prearranged this to the second, but of course that's not the case. We actually have my marketing manager, Lori. Hi, Lori. She's watching this on the replay, going through and putting in all of these timestamps so that you can find the information you need very, very quickly. You can always look at our YouTube video description and you'll get a minute-by-minute breakdown, or really a second-by-second breakdown of everything that we do today. So that might be useful if you're someone who's working through the details of everything in the Network Plus training area on our website. You'll certainly find that as well. Also, keep in mind that I mentioned earlier, we have this Discord. That's where I usually am when we're not live. You'll find me over there as well, along with thousands of other people that are studying for their A+, their Network Plus, their Security Plus exam, and others. This is something that allows you to start up a chat room that you manage, that you can have other people attend and you can study together just on an ad hoc basis. Whenever somebody starts up a study room, there's always somebody else who joins very quickly. It's a great way to meet other people who are studying for this certification. And occasionally you'll have somebody stop in who has already earned the certification that can help answer questions. Such a great community of people and really smart folks on this Discord. We'd love for you to join us at professormesser.com/Discord. Eventually, you will need to take your Network Plus exam. There's always a cost associated with taking any type of IT certification exam. But one way that you can get a lower price is, instead of going to the CompTIA website where it's full price, head over to professormesser.com/vouchers. This is the same voucher that you can purchase on the CompTIA website, but it just costs less. That's one of the advantages of being a CompTIA Platinum partner. They give us a little bit of a break on these vouchers, and we pass along that savings to you to make that exam process just a little bit less painful. It's nice to have a little bit of a cost break. Also, not only do you get your voucher for less cost, I even throw in something extra you will not find anywhere else. It's a copy of my Exam Hacks ebook. We don't sell this ebook. You can only get it with the purchase of a voucher or purchase of one of our success bundles. This has a list of all of the tips and tricks that I use when I'm studying for my CompTIA exams. It also gives you some strategies you can use during the exam itself to perhaps get you a few extra points. Something that might also help when you get into that exam room. Sometimes it's good to know, but it's also good to have a strategy. Maybe that will help you as well. You can find out more about these vouchers at professormesser.com/vouchers. Well, let's talk about performing power budget calculations. Our question that we had earlier was, when performing a power budget calculation for a long-distance fiber run, which of the following must be subtracted from the transmitter's power output? Would it be the switch's total PoE capacity, the wavelength of the light, current SFP wattage draw, losses from connections and splices, or the number of VLANs assigned to the link? We had a little bit of an insight into what the first number of people were answering on this one. So let's close our poll and see what the answers really came in as. We'll click the close poll button. It looks like we had a very strong showing in the orange area. Losses from connections and splices got 56% of the vote. 27% of the vote said the current SFP wattage draw will have a part of this calculation for power budget. We also have 10% say the switch's total PoE capacity. You've also got 3% that say the number of VLANs assigned to the link, and then 5% say the wavelength of the light. So you've got a few options here. Obviously, the majority of you say it's losses from connections and splices, But the 27% of you, over a quarter of you, say it's the current SFP wattage draw. Let's talk real quick about transceivers and how they work. Transceivers are those modular devices you can slide into a switch or a router or some other type of networking equipment that allows you to specify the interface type for that particular port. So you've got an open interface. Maybe you need a multi-mode fiber link. I'll get a multi-mode fiber transceiver and slide it into that connection. The interface right next to it, though, needs to be a copper connection, maybe gigabit Ethernet copper on twisted pair. We'll slide in a gigabit Ethernet twisted pair transceiver into that link. When you're working with fiber, though, the power behind fiber is the light that is in that fiber. We need to get enough light through that fiber all the way down the link that the transceiver on the other end will have enough light coming through that it can understand and interpret the signal that it's receiving. Every transceiver is a little bit different. Some are more sensitive than others. They're able to pull that light out of the fiber better than other transceivers. So when you're calculating this fiber budget, you have to think about every place where we're losing light power along that line. Now, if it's a straight fiber with nothing in the middle, you get as much as possible minus a little bit of attenuation as it's going down that fiber. But if you have a splice in the middle, if you put in a fiber patch panel, if you have a fiber coupler, every time you do that, you're losing a little bit of light. So you have to think about that as you are determining how much light do we need to get at the other end, and then how much are we cutting out of that connection along the way. That's what we refer to as a power budget. We are not referring to the actual electrical power that is powering the system. We're referring to the amount of light power, light that is being sent and received through that fiber. Every transceiver has a different receiver sensitivity. Make sure you check the specifications for your transceiver to see what your sensitivity is and just how much light needs to come through that link so that you will be able to work on that. That was the answer that we were looking for, and that's the one that 56% of you chose, which was losses from connections and splices. That's what we need to subtract from the total transmitter power to estimate what will be received on the other end. The term power budget, as it refers to this fiber connection, is referring to how much light's coming through, and as I mentioned before, it's not referring to any type of electrical power. So although it makes sense why you might want to choose the current SFP wattage draw, that indeed is not the type of power we're referring to. We're really referring to the type of light, how much light is coming through. So 27% of you, I'm with you in the thought process. Unfortunately, not the right answer. And 10% of you said the switch's total PoE capacity. Again, power over Ethernet, referring to power or electrical power in that case, the amount of wattage available to these systems. But again, we're not talking about electrical power when we're referring to fiber power budgeting. And lastly, the wavelength of the light. In the case of this, we're not really referring to wavelength. We don't calculate that as part of your power budget subtraction. So wavelength is not covered there. And the number of VLANs assigned to the link has nothing to do with fiber and has nothing to do with power budgets. Just something thrown in to see if I could get 3% of you to answer. And hey, I did. So not exactly what we were hoping for, but we did get a majority. And by the way, this is a much better number than we got in our study group last month. So 56% of you, I'd say you got it absolutely correct. That's what we were looking for. The losses from connections and splices. That's our rewind question of the month. And hopefully now you're able to see how you can answer these questions online using our Vevox link. Now let's do some new questions, but we're going to mix it up just a little bit. This was a multiple choice question where you have a question and there are multiple answers to choose from. If you didn't know what you were looking at, you didn't understand the question, maybe you weren't quite sure of what the right answer was, you still had a 20% chance of getting this one right just by guessing. CompTIA does not want to make it that easy for us, though. They want to make it a little more complicated just to see if you really know what you're talking about. We don't want people guessing through the exam. So CompTIA, at the very beginning of their exam, will give you a handful of questions that they refer to as performance-based questions. PBQs, performance-based questions, are questions that are simply not multiple choice. And this is something I think that throws a lot of people off because What type of question is not multiple choice? Well, the answer is any type of question that is not multiple choice. So it could be matching, it could be fill in the blank, it could be doing something, a command line, it could be putting things in a particular order, it might be drag and drop. There's a lot of different kinds of ways there's an infinite number of ways to answer or to ask a question with a performance-based question. So my recommendation, if you are thinking of studying for this exam, a lot of people say, how can I study for the performance-based questions? And the answer is you study exactly the same way as you do for the multiple choice questions, because they're going to ask you a question that comes directly from the exam objectives. That's one of the things that I find that is really important to keep in mind, is that don't try to outguess how the question will be asked. You should really be outguessing the answers to the question. And indeed, it's not really a guess. You already have access to what all the potential answers are. They're in your official exam objectives. So today I have for you a performance-based question. This performance-based question is about protocols. This question asks to match each use case with the appropriate protocol. And I have 4 use cases, and under my head here is the available protocols. There are 7 different protocols to choose from. There's ICMP, TCP, UDP, GRE, IPsec-AH, IPsec-ESP, and IKE. So there's a lot there to choose from. And I have 4 different use cases. Well, if there's 7 protocols and 4 different use cases, I've done the math. There will be 3 left over at the end that we do not use. So it's entirely possible you could not really guess your way through this one. You could get them all wrong when you're working through this piece of it. So we'll have to see what you think. The 4 different use cases are: what would we use to negotiate IPsec security associations and encryption keys? What protocol best fits that one? The next one is encapsulate one network protocol inside another without providing encryption. How do we do that? Test host reachability and report network errors. What protocol would be the best choice for that one? And lastly, how could we deliver reliable connection-oriented application data? That's another one. So those are the 4 scenarios. I want you to submit what the 4 protocols would be. You can just put them in order. We're not going to compile the answers for this one because it's basically a fill-in-the-blank question. But see if you can put into this list or list out all 4 of those, just so you know what you chose when we go through the answers in just a moment. See how well you do with this one. There's all of these protocols are listed in the official CompTIA exam objectives. So even if it doesn't fall into these 4, we have these other 3 protocols left over. You also have to know those. So everything you see on the screen comes directly from the CompTIA exam objectives, and you will be expected to know all of them for your exam, not just the 4 of them that I happen to choose in this particular question. This is in the same section that talks about the other port-based protocols that we deal with. So that same section that has HTTP, HTTPS, FTP, FTPS, you've got your SMB, you've got other file transfer protocols, you've got the SSH and the telnets, and all of those protocol lists and all the port numbers. It's that same section. That's where all of this comes from. So you absolutely need to know what each one of these protocols would be used for. This is a common scenario on this particular exam, that they're not so interested in understanding what the different letters mean in the protocols. I know a lot of people like to study what those acronyms are meaning. What is ICMP? Well, those letters stand for this particular set of words. But in reality, CompTIA, although that is a nice thing to know, they're really more interested in knowing, how do you apply that technology? What is ICMP used for? What is TCP used for? What is UDP used for? Those are the types of questions they really want to see if you really know what you're doing. So let's see how you do with this one. A lot of people have got their answers locked in. So we're going to step through all 4 of these to see what I think the answer is, and we'll see what you answered on this one as well. So let's start with the very top one of these. We're going to match each use case with the appropriate protocol. Our first use case is to negotiate IPsec security associations and encryption keys. If you're somebody who has already set up an IPsec tunnel before, you went through a trial by fire. It's not the easiest thing when you first run through IPsec and setting these up, and then it becomes a lot easier as you do every single one after that. I think setting up an IPsec tunnel is more about your ability to read logs than it is to set configurations on IPsec. Maybe that's just my experience in working through it. The best protocol that describes a negotiation of IPsec security associations and encryption keys is IKE. IKE. IKE is our Internet Key Exchange, and it is the protocol that is used very commonly during IPsec setup to be able to securely exchange this key information between the two different ends of that IPsec tunnel. Very common to use, another important set of protocols to know, and something that you will certainly see in the logs as you are setting up that IPsec tunnel. Our next use case was encapsulate one network protocol inside another without providing encryption. You may be thinking, wouldn't I want to use encryption on something like that? An encapsulation of one network protocol inside another, well, that's tunneling. That's what that would be. And often we configure tunneling and we naturally assume tunneling also means encryption, but it's not. That's a separate piece of this. One part is creating the tunnel. The other part is encrypting the information that you put through the tunnel. So just to create a tunnel where nothing else is encrypting, by the way, can be extremely useful when you're trying to solve some very odd corner cases. You can almost always apply a tunnel or apply a NAT, and I think it fixes about 75% of challenges with network integrations. At least it tends to be from my perspective. That's all. We'd always come up with a solution. Well, to merge these networks together, we'll do NAT. That's how we'll do it. Or we'll set up a tunnel and we'll connect them together. There's lots of different ways. It's one way or the other to do that. But in this case, just to create the tunnel is a GRE tunnel. That is our generic routing encapsulation. And that's something that's commonly used for setting up VPN connections, not necessarily IPsec, but certainly a number of different, not just one individual type of tunneling method, but certainly a way that you could set up tunnels and transfer information through that tunnel using generic routing encapsulation, or GRE. Our next use case is I want to test host reachability and report network errors. That is next on our list. Now, what protocol would best test host reachability and report network errors? Well, that's the ping protocol, of course. Ping isn't a protocol, that's a utility. What protocol is used by ping to provide that functionality? That is ICMP. ICMP is the Internet Control Message Protocol. I describe it in my training course as a way that different devices on the network can send text messages to each other behind the scenes. That's effectively what ICMP does. It's a way that networking devices are able to transfer management information and informational details outside the scope of an application. It's done just directly between devices. ICMP commonly used for that. We often associate ICMP with pings, but ICMP has a lot of different functions associated with it. That's another good way that you can think about the extensibility of a single protocol and how it's used. We think about it one way, but in reality, it may be used a number of different ways on the network. And our last used case is deliver reliable connection-oriented application data, which sounds like you do for everything, but that's not actually the case. In this case, obviously, we want to deliver application data. That's kind of standard. But what about reliable connection-oriented application data? Well, that certainly sounds to me like a common protocol that you might use all the time for a transmission control protocol, or TCP. We often consider TCP as being that reliable connection, and we often describe UDP as being unreliable. And in a way, those words are sort of misleading. The ability to send traffic across the network it works just as well using TCP as it does UDP. There's nothing that makes one more or less reliable than the other. It's just that with TCP, It effectively requires an acknowledgement to everything that you send, almost like a read receipt or somebody is signed for a package on every single packet that you send through the network. So you send a TCP data, you would expect to receive a TCP acknowledgement from the other side, and that lets you know, okay, they got the message I sent to them. Some protocols, though, some applications don't need that level of comfort. They don't need to know that the data even got there. They're just going to send it down the way. And if it gets there, it gets there. If it doesn't, it doesn't. And I don't need to be informed of that. That would be UDP, the user datagram protocol that does that. But both of those are just as useful and functional on a network as the other. One is not faster than the other. One is not slower than the other, at least not in the very broad perspective of things. They both work exceptionally well. You don't have to worry about one not working and one working. That's not what reliable and unreliable means. It's really referring to the ability to know that the data really got to the other side. You can rely on that because you got an acknowledgement because you used Transmission Control Protocol, or TCP. Those were our protocols in our question of the month. Negotiating IPsec security associations and encryption keys is the Internet Key Exchange, or IKE. We have encapsulate one network protocol inside another without providing encryption. A GRE tunnel does that. That's the generic routing encapsulation. We have testing host reachability and reporting network errors is commonly done using the Internet Control Message Protocol, or ICMP. And then lastly, delivering reliable connection-oriented application data. That is the Transmission Control Protocol, or TCP. We did not use UDP, which is sort of the partner, the brother-sister combination of the TCP-UDP pair. We also did not choose IPsec AH, our authentication header, or IPsec ESP. So these are different protocols that are important to know for your exam, but make sure that you have studied all of these. If any of these you're wondering, wait, what does IPsec AH do again? Make sure you check your exam objectives. Make sure you check your study materials. This will be pretty important as you get into the world of IPsec, and indeed important because they are on the official Network Plus exam objectives. That's our performance-based question of the month. Hopefully you did pretty well on that one. Let's now jump back to a multiple choice question and see how well you do with this one. Our next question asks, a network administrator implements digital signatures for all internal communications to ensure messages cannot be altered without detection. Which part of the CIA triad is most associated by this security control? Grammar aside, the possible answers are integrity, confidentiality, non-repudiation, risk management, or availability. It's got to be one of those, right? All of these are things we do need to know about this exam. If you think you know the answer, use the link on your screen. Go to professormesser.com/QA. Please no answers in the chat room. Please no hints in the chat room. Make sure you are familiar with all of these. Not only do you need to be familiar with the CIA triad, you have to be familiar with all of the answers that we have here as well. Lock in your answer at any time. Follow that link on your screen, professormesser.com/QA. You can put that in at any time. That is also the link, by the way, that you can use to submit a question for me in the after show as we're going through this. If you have a question, if something is top of mind for you, you'd like to know about things happening in the industry, you have a question about something in the news, you have a question about technology in general, or really just a question about anything, you can always ask that question using that same link, professormesser.com/QA. It's a little tab at the top. You can bounce between answering a question and asking a question using those tabs at the top of that screen. Let's see how you did with this one. The question asks, a network administrator implements digital signatures for all internal communications to ensure messages cannot be altered without detection. Which part of the CIA triad is most associated with this security control? Would that be integrity, confidentiality, non-repudiation, risk management, or availability? Let's close our poll and see how we did. Big numbers, 82% of you say the answer is integrity. 12% say the answer is confidentiality. 5% said non-repudiation. I thought that one would be larger. 1% said risk management. And then 0% said availability. Always get sad over that 0% that's there. So what would be the right answer for this one? 82%, that's a pretty strong number, said integrity, but did we move in the wrong direction here? Nope, we were absolutely correct. That is exactly what a digital signature provides, is integrity. It's effectively ensuring that the messages you're receiving really were written by the person who's listed in that message and nothing has been changed with that message that you received. That's one of the great benefits of having a digital signature. The CIA triad is the piece that we need to add that into the mix. The CIA triad, obviously, here's what we see on the screen, refers to confidentiality, availability, and integrity. So CAI, I guess, as I described it there, but you have now all three of those terms. Those are the three associated with the CIA triad: confidentiality, integrity, and availability. Each one of those is a separate leg in this triangle. All three are important for IT security, and all three are important for you to know, especially as it is associated with the CIA triad and associated with the technologies that we use to help in IT security. The CIA triad, a good one to know: confidentiality, integrity, and availability. Those got pretty good numbers on here, 82%. We got 12% and 0%. Non-repudiation is what the description of a digital signature provides. It provides that assurance that the information that you have in that message that was received cannot be reputed. It is something that I know exactly who sent this message. I know that everything in this message that I am receiving is exactly as it was originally sent, because I have verified the digital signature, and now I have non-repudiation in that message. But non-repudiation by itself is not one of those legs of the CIA triad, so that would not be the answer we were looking for. And risk management, always important to know about risk management, but risk management is not doesn't have the ability to ensure messages cannot be altered without detection. Risk management's more of a broader scope that kind of describes everything we are doing with security, not specifically this idea of non-repudiation with our email messages. The answer here from the CIA triad, the I in CIA, is indeed integrity. That's what digital signatures do for us. And 82% of you got that one absolutely right. Well done. We have a lot of information in the Network Plus exam. There were a lot of questions that were working through ports and protocols and different security controls and encryption and IPsec tunnels. There's a lot to the Security Plus exam. And if you're someone who is studying for Security Plus, you've probably seen this. Just in our training course, we have 87 videos and over 12 hours of content just for Network Plus. That's a lot of videos. It's a lot of content. And I'd love it if everyone went through every single video. We cover every objective from the exam objectives, but not everybody has the time. So I created a set of course notes that allow you to summarize everything from these videos in one place. Let me give you an idea of what these look like. We have this right here. This is the digital PDF version of the course notes. We also have these in a physical form if you prefer a book. If you get the physical edition that I'm holding, it is identical in content to the digital edition, obviously. But this is also something that you get the digital edition for no additional charge if you buy the physical version. So while you're waiting on this to be printed and shipped to you, which doesn't take very much time at all, but you want to have something right now, you can purchase the physical edition. And while we're working on packaging that up, you'll have immediate access to this digital version that you see in front of me. We got a table of contents. We've got the course notes themselves. They follow the same format, structure, and content as the exam objectives do. We have all of the same text, all of the same charts, all of the same detailed graphics. Everything that you need from that video, we've collapsed into this set of course notes. Another great way to keep up with what you need to know for this exam. You can find out more about these course notes on our website. You can go to the main menu of our website at professormesser.com or simply go to professormesser.com/NPCN for the Network Plus course notes. Something you can do. Yeah, we do print these on demand. So no, we don't keep them in stock. We can print just as fast as we can grab them off a shelf. So every time you get a book from us, it's one that has been printed just for you. And it also means that we don't waste anything. We don't waste any paper. We don't waste any resources. We can print it on demand and get it to you post haste, which is a great way to do it in my mind. Find out more about this one, professormesser.com/NPCN to learn more about our Network Plus course notes. Let's do another question. Next on our list is this one. Network administrators. This is a network administrator that has just added a new router, but they neglected to add a route to the internet. Oops. Which of the following occurs when the router receives a packet with the internet as its destination? Do we get an ICMP host unreachable message sent to the destination? The packet is sent to all router interfaces. The packet is dropped. The packet is returned to the host, or a gateway of last resort is automatically added. If you think you know the answer, follow the link on your screen, professormesser.com/QA, and lock in your answer. Let's see if you know what happens when this particular scenario occurs. As I mentioned earlier, CompTIA loves a scenario. They love a story that has a beginning, a middle, and they wait for you to give us the end. And that's exactly what we have here with this network administrator and the router that they have installed. This particular problem is one that I'm very familiar with because I'm always forgetting to put routes into a brand new layer 3 device. As many of you know, I've installed hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of next generation firewalls and some of the biggest networks in the world. And then there's always something you forget. Nobody's perfect, but it's very easy to troubleshoot and find this particular problem and fix it. Sometimes these things fix themselves. Sometimes it's configured to automatically work. Sometimes it requires manual intervention. And sometimes neither of those things seems to work. And you got to call somebody who really knows what they're doing. See if you know in this one. Lock in your answer. Go to professormesser.com/QA. Let's see how you did with this one. The question asks, a network administrator has just added a new router, but they neglected to add a route to the internet. Which of the following occurs when the router receives a packet with the internet as its destination? And is it that an ICMP host unreachable message is sent to the destination? Is it the packet is sent to all router interfaces? Is it that the packet is dropped? Is it that the packet is returned to the host? Or is it a gateway of last resort is automatically added? Let's see how you answered this one. We'll close our poll. Oh, we got a bit of a rainbow. No majority answers on this one. We got close, though. 45% of you say the packet is dropped. 20% say an ICMP host unreachable message is sent to the destination. You also have two others that tied for third place. A gateway of last resort is automatically added, and the packet is returned to the host, got 13% apiece. And then in last place, 8% of you say the packet is sent to all router interfaces. This is, unfortunately, as I mentioned earlier, an all too common occurrence. This could be because it's a manual configuration and we're doing static routes and we forgot to put a route in. This could be because we have dynamic routing and the dynamic routing has lost the route to that particular location. But whenever a router receives a packet and there's nowhere to send it, because effectively these packets are simply stopping at every router along the way and saying, where do I go now? And the router has to tell them where to go. And they go, oh, no problem. Let me see where you're going. All right, let me look at my list. Yeah, I don't know how to get there. I have no idea how to get there. I don't have that in my routing table. I'm just going to drop you there. Drop you on the floor. Done. That's it. That's all that happens when that occurs. There's other things that may occur behind the scenes also, but from the different options that we had, that one is the one that tends to be the most common occurrence. The one you expect to occur is that the packet is dropped when that happens. Now, whenever you start working through the details of these errors, working through the pieces of it, you may even think, oh, but wait, whenever that occurs, we've already talked about how ICMP does this. 20% of you said an ICMP host unreachable message is sent to the destination. That's because it sends a message saying, I can't get there. Well, wait a second. We don't know where the destination is. How am I supposed to send an ICMP message to the destination? That's because the ICMP host unreachable message is sent to the source address, not the destination address. Is that a little bit of a trick question? Yeah, a little bit of a trick question. But it's one of those where you do have to read through all of these answers, and sometimes a single word in an answer. I always miss the not. Whenever they have a not in it, N-O-T, to change the perspective of the answer, I always miss that. But in this case, we do send ICMP messages, network unreachable, host unreachable, depends on what particular problem is, but it's sent back to the person that sent it so that they're aware, I can't get there from here. Somebody has to tell the person that originally sent that what in the world that is. The best thing you can do is really just check all of your routes. Check everything that's occurring all the way through the link. Go to every router. This is the way you troubleshoot a static routing issue, whether it's a missing route or, in my case, I would always have a route that would point back to another route that would point back, and you just have a routing loop occurring when you get there. So what you do is you go to every single router. If you're on this laptop, you log into this router, you look at the routing table, you make sure the routes that you need are in that routing table. Then you go to the next router down the line and you examine that router. There it is. And then you go to the next router down the line, you examine the next router. So you've got 3 routers in this list. So you go to every single router and you look at the routing table. Here's the part where you're going to mess up many, many, many times. You're so focused on, can I get to that destination, that you're looking at the routing table and all of these routers to see if you can make it all the way to that destination. And you may even find that you forgot a route you added into the list. But you also have to remember the packet has to come back the other direction. So as you're going through looking at, do I have a route to the destination? Also make sure that the destination has a route to get back to the source. So you have to do it in both directions. The routers are just not going to know that you just came through here heading that way. You have to tell it how to get back the other direction. So working with routes, it's not difficult, but you do have to be very methodical when you're going through the troubleshooting process and dealing with bad routes, missing routes, or oddly configured routes. Just one little thing when that occurs. So certainly can happen when you're working through those. That is the answer that we were looking for. The packet is indeed dropped. We often will say that we walk into a room, what are all these packets doing all over the floor? Because we drop so much of that. This is not something obviously that occurs. There's no real packets on the floor, but we can virtually imagine every single packet falling out of that router and onto the floor just because we didn't have a route available in our routing table. These other answers we've already talked about. We know why the ICMP host unreachable message is not sent to the destination now. We also can tell you the packet is not sent to all router interfaces. You might have been thinking about a switch. When the switch doesn't have a particular MAC address in its table, it just sends the packet out there, in that particular case, the frame out to every other interface on that switch. So if it's a 24-port switch, we receive the packet or that particular frame on one interface, and then we send that frame out the other 23 interfaces on that particular switch. Happens all the time. But not something that we have to worry about with routers. Routers do not work that way, thankfully. Packet is not returned to the host. Nothing is returned to the host. There's no reason to return the packet. Hey, you dropped off this packet. I have nowhere to send it. I thought I would give it back to you. Nope, it's already gone. We've already dropped it on the floor. I guess you're going to have to come back in here and pull it off the floor if you would like a copy of that. You already know what you sent anyway. So that's another case where it doesn't help to send it back to the host. You would have to do that all over again. And a gateway of last resort, thankfully, is not automatically added. I can only imagine how a router would occur just by, let's just pick some IP address to send this as a gateway of last resort. That's not the way it works. You need to make sure that you manually configure a gateway of last resort if that is what you want to put into your router. Of course, not every router will have a gateway of last resort. Some people have a very specific set of static routes. If it doesn't match anything in that static routing table, we drop it. That may be by design. That's completely up to you. In this case, the packet is dropped. That's what we get when we don't have a route. And that is the answer we were looking for. 45% of you got that one absolutely correct. Let's do another one, shall we? These are kind of fun. So let's step through another issue that we're working with. This one more of a security question. This question asks, a security auditor discovers an administrator using a text-based console to manage a switch, and the credentials and data are being sent in the clear. Which port is currently being used for this communication? Is it using port 25, 23, 20, 22, or 21? Oof, it's all 20s. It's all something. All port numbers we need to know for our Network Plus exam, but we need to know the specific one in this scenario. Make sure that you are familiar with all of these port numbers to have it there. If you think you know the answer, lock in your answer using the link on your screen. Go to professormesser.com/QA. Please no answers in the chat room. Please no hints in the chat room. Instead, you want to go to that link that you see on your screen, professormesser.com/QA. Lots of port numbers that you could choose from in this scenario. Make sure you're familiar with them. The question again asked, a security auditor discovers an administrator using a text-based console to manage a switch, and the credentials and data are being sent in the clear. Which port is being used for this communication? Is it 25, 23, 20, 22, or 21? Just pick anything in the 20s. It's got to be one of them, right? I guess in this case, we do have a choice here. But all of these port numbers are important. So make sure you're familiar with all of them. That might be something to also think about. Port numbers, we often just consider and refer them back to the protocol, but we also have to know how that protocol works. Another good example of that with this particular question. Lock in your answers. Go to professormesser.com/QA to lock that in and see how you do with this one. The question again asks, a security auditor discovers an administrator using a text-based console to manage a switch, and their credentials and data are being sent in the clear. Which port is currently being used for this communication? Is it port 25, port 23, port 20, port 22, or port 21? I'm expecting big numbers on this one, but I never know until I hit the button. So let's find out. Let's hit the button. And not bad numbers. I was kind of expecting larger than 63% of you chose port 23. We also have 18% that chose port 21. We have a tie for third. Again, 7% apiece said port 20 and port 22. And then 4% on this list say port 25. Well, the first thing that we need to know about this question is what is going on here. If they are at a text-based console and the credentials and data are being sent in the clear, this means that when we log in with our username and password, our username and password is sent through the network in a non-encrypted form, which means if somebody was capturing packets during that time frame, they would have captured our username and they would have literally captured the in clear text password that we were sending. Not what you want. I'm just saying, from a security perspective, not exactly what you want to be running when you're doing that. The question that I have for you is not about the protocol that was being used, but the port number used by that protocol. So the first thing we need to think about is that if we are logging in and managing a switch at a text-based console, then that credentials and data are being sent using Telnet if we have it in the clear. It's not using SSH. It's not using Secure Shell. Secure Shell is port 22, but Telnet is port 23. Telnet is the one that sends information to a console just like this. In fact, it looks just like using SSH. This is if you didn't look closely, you would see that this seems to be just a normal SSH session on my screen. But in this particular case, this is Telnet. So everything that you see on your screen has been sent in the clear, unencrypted across the network. And that's something you simply must not do. You cannot do this. Do not ever do that. The in the clear communication, I put here in very mild terms, it is not the best choice for production systems. I think it legitimately is a horrible, very bad, and unacceptable choice for production systems, even systems you're using in your home. It's kind of hard to find even a system that can work with Telnet as a server on it any longer. So make sure you are familiar with those different protocols, what they do. Make sure you know what the difference is between an SSH and a Telnet, and what the on-the-wire differences are of those. You might even want to do some packet captures if you have a way to Telnet into a device. There's a lot of places you can Telnet into across the internet. You could capture packets locally, Telnet into that device, and then look at the packet capture, and you'll see everything is in the clear. That should scare you enough right there. But just to make sure that you have picked the right one, let's now do SSH. Maybe you have a local router. Maybe you have a router on the internet. Maybe there's something else. You can find a device you can SSH into on the internet, lots of places. Do an SSH session, capture those packets, and you'll find you can't find your username and password in it anywhere. So Telnet is what we are using here on port 23. That is in the clear. And indeed, that is what 63% of you chose. That is the right answer, the one that we were looking for. As I've already mentioned, port 22 is SSH. That's the one you should have been using. So although we have this in the clear console connection, what if it was an automatically encrypted console connection? That's what I love about SSH. There's nothing I really have to configure. I know that if I'm using SSH, the security is built into it. I don't have to double think about it. I don't have to worry about it. I don't have to set up any special keys if I don't want to. And it's very extensible in how it operates. SSH is really should be your very common, most standard way of communicating to these devices. Although I will tell you, Telnet does have some interesting security capabilities in it as well, because you're able to send data to a device in the clear over any port number using Telnet. So there are some utilitarian functions of Telnet that really make it so that I want to keep it on my machine. I don't want to delete Telnet. I don't want to uninstall it because I can still use it for different things. Just don't use it for terminal communication. Don't ever do that as well. We also have ports 20 and port 21 on here. Those are used by FTP. Those are in the clear most commonly. FTP does not have any encryption built into it. Both of those are used for FTP, one of them for data, one of them for control, but you don't commonly have it connected using a text-based console and managing a switch with FTP. So that would not apply in this scenario. It meets that in the clear function, but it doesn't match the text-based console capability. And then 25, if you're doing anything with email, you're probably familiar with SMTP using port 25, although we don't tend to see unencrypted. That very commonly was used for non-encrypted mail communication. These days, we still tend to use port 25, but we tend to encrypt all of the data using port 25. So in this case, there really was only one option to choose from, the one that we wanted, port 23. That's Telnet. That is unencrypted in the clear terminal communication. That definitely describes what we have on our screen here. And hopefully that's given you some perspective on what you should and perhaps should not be using for your terminal communication. I also gave you a little bit of homework and things you could do in your home lab. There would be a nice one to do. Compare SSH and compare Telnet. Look at the differences. Then you'll never forget it. You'll know absolutely that is the particular type of utility that fits best for security would be Secure Shell or SSH running over port 22. Well done with that one. Good numbers on that one. I like to see the strong numbers. Let's do another question, though. We got more time. We can fit in a lot of questions this month, which I think is great. Let's do next. This question asks, a technician is connecting two switches that both host members of VLAN 10, VLAN 20, and VLAN 100. What type of connection would be the best choice to carry this traffic between switches? Would it be 802.1x, 802.11h, 802.11ax, 802.3, or 802.1q? It's a lot of 802s in here. I know. All of these, by the way, you do have to know for the Network Plus exam. You'll probably be working with a lot more IEEE standards than the ones we see here. This is just 5 of them. The question again asks, a technician is connecting two switches that both host members of VLAN 10, VLAN 20, and VLAN 100. What type of connection would be the best choice to carry this traffic between switches? Would it be 802.1x, 802.11h, 802.11ax, 802.3, or 802.1q? If you think you know the answer, please no answers in the chat room. Instead, go to the link right here on your screen. Go to professormesser.com/QA and tell me what 802 you think it is. It's one of these 802s. 802 is the committee at IEEE that is effectively broadly networking. All of the networking standards for anything network related are in the 802 committee. So that's the one we have to know about. But in the case of this, you'll notice there's a lot of 802s. There's an 802.1, there's an 802.2, there's an 802.3, 4, 5. So they've broken up all of these into subcommittees, and then each one of them has a key piece of this. For example, if you're somebody who is working on wireless networking, you probably heard over and over 802.11. So I might have given something away by saying that on the live stream, but a lot of you have already locked in your answers, so I can do that. So anytime you see that, we know we're working with a wireless network. And of course, that has a whole set of scopes of technologies underneath that we want to worry about. Let's answer this question, though. The question that we have here is, a technician is connecting two switches that both host members of VLAN 10, VLAN 20, and VLAN 100. What type of connection would be the best choice to carry this traffic between switches? What would it be? Would it be 802.1x, 802.11h, 802.11ax, 802.3, or 802.1q? Let's see what you answered. We'll close our poll. Another big 60% number say the answer is 802.1q. We have 15% that say 802.11ax, practically a tie at 14% say the answer is 802.1x. We have 6% that said 802.3. And then lastly, 1% said 802.11h. Not many people chose that one either. So we got a lot to choose from, but is the answer really the one we all went with? There were a lot of 802s there. Well, if we show the correct answer, you can indeed see that the 64% of you that chose .1q, which is how the cool kids say it, that is trunking between switches. That's a way to encapsulate, to tunnel multiple VLANs between one switch and the other. I mentioned earlier, we use tunneling for so many different things in networking. Here's another example of how we would tunnel information from one to the other. In the reality of things, we often refer to this as a tunnel. In reality, we're just kind of sticking a tag in front of all of the data that comes after it. But a similar scenario, a similar way that we're structuring the packet, in this case, the frame, to be able to send that information from one side to the other. 802.1q. You see this all the time when we're talking about having multiple VLANs on multiple switches. Now, one of the ways you would do this, for example, we got two VLANs on this switch, VLAN 100 and VLAN 200. You can see VLAN 100 is for the devices that are plugged into the red network, and VLAN 200 is for the devices that are plugged into the blue network. We have another switch with exactly the same VLANs, a VLAN 100 and a VLAN 200. In fact, there are red devices down here and blue devices down here. How do we connect it so the red devices can connect to the red devices and the blue devices can connect to the blue devices, but they still can't connect to each other? How would that work? Well, we could just plug in multiple cables between the switches. We have one cable that goes from a blue port to a blue port on the other switch. That would certainly connect them. And then we could take another interface on the switch, configure it as a red port, as a VLAN 100 port, and connect it to another VLAN 100 port on the other switch. That would effectively connect both of those VLANs and allow the red network to communicate to the red network, the blue network to communicate to the blue network, and not allow either of those connect to each other. It allows both of those VLANs to connect to each other. What could be easier than that? Well, the problem comes when we have a third VLAN or a fourth VLAN or 100 VLANs or 1,000 VLANs between switches. This can absolutely occur when this happens. So imagine if you have, let's just say you have 10 different VLANs on each switch. We would need 10 different cables between all of them to make that work. Well, that's now too many cables. We're now burning all of these different interfaces just so we can have connectivity. What if we could do this differently? What if we could connect, instead of all those individual cables, let's connect one single connection between switches, and then we simply send all of the VLANs over that single link. That is what is called a trunked link. We configure a trunked interface on one switch, we configure a trunked interface on the other, and we configure that interface to allow communication for VLAN 100 or VLAN 200. Or if you're lazy like me, you've configured that interface to simply pass any VLAN to any VLAN on the other side. So 1 to 1, 2 to 2, 3 to 3, 4 to 4. If you send anything over any VLAN, it'll show up on that VLAN on the other side. Makes it very, very simple. So I could have, in this case, 2 different VLANs, but 1 cable. I can have 3 different VLANs, 1 cable. I can have 100 VLANs between these switches. Yep, 1 cable. I could have 1,000 VLANs between these switches. I think we see a trend here, 1 cable. Now, you can, of course, make it even more complex. You could have link aggregation here and have multiple links all sharing to increase the bandwidth. There's lots of ways to do this, but at a very basic level, one single connection allows you to trunk communication from one device to another using the IEEE standard of, as we call it, .1Q, 802.1Q. So that is the important answer here. And in fact, that's what most of you chose. 64% of you said the answer was .1Q. That's exactly what you would use between these switches. I have a feeling some of you may have configured this before. Now, 15% of you chose 802.11ax. As I mentioned in my conversation earlier, 802.11 is the wireless committee for the IEEE 802. So anything with an 802.11 would be a wireless technology, and 802.11ax was a major release of a wireless standard. So this is probably the reason we use the Wi-Fi numbers now. Wi-Fi 6, Wi-Fi 7, Wi-Fi 8 makes it much easier than memorizing the IEEE standard. Certainly makes it more palatable for the consumer market. Nobody wants to buy, I'm looking for an 802.11ax router. That's just, how do you expect anyone to remember that walking into a big box store? But if I just need, I need Wi-Fi, and I want Wi-Fi that's the biggest number. There you go. That's what we're getting. Wi-Fi 8, Wi-Fi 9, whatever all of these come out. Certainly to consider. 14% of you said 802.1x. 802.1, different committee than 802.11, a different committee, but it's the same committee that did 802.1Q with the trunking. 802.1x is referring to network-based authentication. We often refer to it as network access control. So .1x means before you can even send any information over the network, you must authenticate. So if you've ever been on a corporate wireless network and you've connected to that wireless network for the first time, it asks you for a username and password. And it asks you that because that access point has been configured to require some type of authentication, which means the administrator checked the box that said require 802.1x. It also means that that access point is probably going to reference a different set of authentication credentials that are stored on a centralized authentication server. Many times this is your Active Directory server. Everybody has an Active Directory server at their office these days. So you would use the standard username and password to be able to tell the access point that you are legitimate. The access point goes to your Active Directory server and says, is this username and password, is this legitimate? And the Active Directory server says, well, yes, it is. They still work here. That is a legitimate login. And then that person can communicate on the network. This is what you would commonly use, for instance, in a conference room, because you know that you're bringing people into the conference room like me. And I will plug into an open Ethernet interface in an instant to see what's going on, usually to do a packet capture. So you don't want me to do that inside of your conference room. 802.1x means that nothing is going to communicate over that interface until you log in, provide credentials to be able to do that. So important there as well. We have other type of things to think about here. 6% of you said 802.3. That is the committee for Ethernet, wired Ethernet connectivity. So if you're working on a 100 megabit Ethernet network, you're on a gig network, you're doing 10 gig Ethernet, you're doing 40 gig Ethernet, you're doing 100 gig Ethernet, all of those are through the 802.3 committee. So another one of those things to think about when you're working with the Ethernet topology. You'll notice everything says, oh, this is 802.3 standard compliant. That's what they're referring to. And lastly, 1% of you said 802.11h. The single H letter there was not a major standard for wireless, but it did set some standards for how wireless signal strength is used when there are other access points around. So the access points will effectively play nice together. 802.11h is useful from that. In fact, it's built into many of the common standards now. They tend to roll those standards up into a major standard so that you don't have to worry about those individual numbers. But for the exam, it is in the official exam objectives. So make sure you're familiar with 802.11h. There's not a lot of of these Ethernet standards, these 802.IEEE standards anyway, on the exam. But these you do need to know. These did come from the exam objectives. So if you don't recognize any right off the top of your head, make sure you go back to the exam objectives so you know exactly what will be expected of you there. If you're watching this video for continuing education unit credit, I would love to send you an email that certifies that you were here to watch this 1-hour webinar category CEU. The way that you would earn that CEU is you go to the top or the bottom of the Professor Messer website. You click the link that says Contact Us, and in that Contact Us form that comes up, put in your name, your email address. In the subject line, please put August 2026 Network Plus, and in the body of the message on a line by itself, put the super secret code words of the month, 802.1Q, 802.3. See, we're mixing it up a little bit. The super secret code words of the month, 802.1Q and 802.3. You can also put anything else you would like into that message. They're all sent to me, and I do like to read through them. So I'd love to hear about where you are in your studies. If you're working towards a renewal of your Network Plus, it's always nice to be able to see what you're working through on your side as well. Send that to me. It takes me about a week to turn these around, but I will send you an email that has been digitally signed that certifies that you were here for a 1-hour webinar category CEU. If you missed that, let's rewind. Let me give you the process again. You must follow the process or you don't get the CEU. This process of sending the CEU is part of the CEU. So make sure you do it this way. Go to the top or the bottom of the Professor Messer website. In the Contact Us is the link that you want to click on. In that Contact Us link, when it brings up the form, put in your name, your email address. In the subject line, please put August 2026 Network Plus. And on the body of the message, on a line by itself, put the super secret code words of the month, 802.1Q, 802.3. I think I did that right both times. I think I did it the same both times, didn't I? I think I did. So we're good. Don't try to hide the words somewhere in some long paragraph that describes something else, because you won't get a CEU. You have to follow these instructions to get the CEU. And I want you to get the CEU. So make sure you follow those so that you're able to retrieve or receive the CEU information. That might be useful if you're planning to renew your certification using CEUs, but not everybody is. But don't worry about that. If you're not planning to renew your certification with CEUs, none of this would apply to you, but I'll send you the email anyway. Why not? We'll be best friends. We'll be pen pals. We'll send information back and forth, I guess, regarding your CEU. Everything that we talked about today came directly from the CompTIA exam objectives. If you have not used these objectives before, they are powerful. They contain every single thing you need to know for your exam. Not just some of it, not just a broad description of it. They give you a bullet by bullet breakdown of everything. This is a copy of the exam objectives. For example, we'll go to the section 1.2, compare and contrast networking appliances, applications, and functions. So you need to know about physical and virtual appliances for routers, switches, firewalls, IDS, IPS, load balancers, proxies, network attached storage, storage area network, a SAN, wireless access points, wireless controllers, content delivery networks, virtual private networks, quality of service, and time to live. That's just one section of one domain of the entire exam. And you can see on this list is, what are there, 20, 25 different bullets here we need to know about. Those are pretty important to know. Make sure you are familiar with everything that is listed here. That's just one section. There are pages and pages and pages and pages and pages of these. So make sure you have these objectives. They're the first thing you should read through before you start your studies. Go to the link on your screen, professormesser.com/objectives. I have a link there that will take you directly to the Network Plus exam objectives on the CompTIA website. They're hosted over there. It's their materials, and it's free. There's nothing you pay for the objectives. What? That's right. Absolutely free. One of the best resources you can get, and it's free. And this is also something that you should use as a checklist before you are able to schedule your exam. Are you really ready to take the exam? Have you really studied every topic that could come up on the exam? Unless you've gone through your exam objectives, you have no way to answer that question. Use those objectives. They are a valuable tool. Make sure you are familiar with those. We have a lot to to talk about. We're not done we're close to being finished yet. We have all of your questions coming up next, so stick around for that. But also let you know that we do one of these study groups every month. This was the one that we did in August. We still have another study group in August. Next week at this time, I'm doing my Security Plus study group on the 19th. We'd love for you to come back and watch that one as well. We've also scheduled our other, I don't have my second calendar in here, but we'll bring up the second calendar in the other one. We've got our September dates already set. How would you even know where those were? Well, we're going to add them to the calendar this weekend at professormesser.com/calendar. That's really the best place to go if you want to know when the next live event is going to be, because it will be in that calendar. Perhaps more importantly, if I have to change the time and the date of an event, I change it there first. So you get the most up-to-date information by going to professormesser.com/calendar. I also at the same time update the events link that is in our Discord. So make sure that you have a look at either one of those places. They will always be up to date. And occasionally I do have to change things in my schedule, so make sure you're familiar with that. As I mentioned, we're not anywhere close to being done yet. Stick around for our after show, where instead of me asking you questions, you get to ask me questions. You can submit those at any time using that same link that we've been using, professormesser.com/QA. Don't forget about our success bundle on our website, which is our course notes, our downloadable videos, downloadable audio, our exam hacks ebook, and more. Find that at professormesser.com/netsuccess. Also, why are you paying full price for your vouchers over at the CompTIA website? Why don't you get a discount on your vouchers? If you happen to be in the U.S., Canada, or U.S. territory, you can go to professormesser.com/vouchers, and the discount is just built in. So easy to work through that. And of course, we are doing all kinds of things online. If you want to catch up with us, we've got our professormesser.com/Discord. Don't forget about our YouTube channel, where all of our Network Plus videos are. Every minute of every video available for you to watch for free. We also have our weekly Network Plus pop quiz question that we put on X, we put on Instagram, we put on Facebook, we put on LinkedIn. You'll find all of those there. Plenty to look at on that side. It's also a good way to keep track of what we are doing and the things happening on this side of the screen. We always like to make sure and interact with everybody. Discord's a great place to find me wherever you happen to be. Well, thank you so much for joining us in this first hour. There's more to come. Stay exactly where you are. We're starting up in just a few seconds with our after show. Thanks for joining us, and we will see you next time on the Network Plus Study Group. All right, I'm going to take a sip here. One moment. How delicious. Now let's get me on the screen again somehow using all of these buttons. I have to wonder sometimes what I'm doing with all of these buttons. I don't have enough. I need more buttons. You only see some of the buttons because I'm in the way. There's lots of buttons to push. Maybe that's why I do this. Maybe it has nothing to do with live streams. I just want to push some buttons, and this is a good way to do it. Sometimes I'm not so great at pushing the buttons, which is really a different kind of problem, quite honestly. Let's now go back to what we came here for, which is our after show. The after show is where you get to ask me questions about what's going on in the world. This is where you would go to make that happen. It's the same link we've been using this whole time. Go to professormesser.com/QA. We can also submit questions for that second hour of the study group whenever you would like. We'll be moderating questions during that session. So we'll have to see. This is something that makes sense for you. See what you do. We did have a question come in the chat. Very angry question from Tina, who asked, why make this stream so you can't rewind or pause? I'm kind of putting this on you too much, Tina. I'm sorry. Tina asked, why make this stream so you can't rewind or pause? Now I can't go back and watch until it gets posted later. Well, I have to agree. That is kind of annoying. It's fair. It's a fair question. It would be good to have this. The problem is not everybody understands that DVR functionality of YouTube. Tina gets it. She's right in the middle of it. She's fine with rewinding, going forward or whatever. The problem is if you can rewind, some people will start the stream when we're halfway through and they're trying to answer questions we did 30 minutes ago. So it just becomes too confusing for folks. So I try to keep it simple during the live stream. It's not about me limiting functionality. It's really about making sure that everybody's in the same place at the same time on a stream that to be fair, is a little time sensitive. And of course, on the replay, you can go back and forth whenever you'd like. So that's why I'm not really trying to be difficult. I'm really trying to make sure everybody is included in the live stream. And I of course have live streams I go to and I can rewind. Oh, I missed that. Let's go back a couple bit and have a look at that. I think that's a really great feature. Just doesn't seem to fit the interactive functionality of the streams that we do here. So I apologize for that. It's a legitimate thing to be frustrated over, and I get it. But for what we're doing, I think having everybody at the same place at the same time tends to be a little bit better. So I have intentionally set it up that way. I have clicked that button so it works that way. So that's why. It's not to be mean or forgetful or just not even thinking about it. That was actually intentional. Whether that's good or not, we'll find out. It tends to have worked okay so far. So I beg for your forgiveness, Tina. I hope that makes some sense. And that's why we do it that way. Let's go through the questions that you have, which I haven't even looked at yet. Let's do this right now. Lots of questions sitting here waiting for me. So we should absolutely go through this list. Let's talk about taking the exam. Let's talk about what's good and what's bad, or what we should think about during the process of taking the exam. And I specifically want to bring up this question from ZQ, who says, I have finished reading the book, done all of your streams, as well as many YouTubes, and purchased practice exams. I'm right now around 78 to 85% on average across all of these practice exams. Good numbers, by the way. Z continues and says, at what point is it diminishing returns, and how to know when you're ready for the exam? This is probably one of the top questions I get every day about how do I know when I'm ready to take this exam? And thankfully, CompTIA has really given us a number of tools that we can use to help us understand if we really are ready. Now, obviously, I think the lead up to this is spot on. If you're planning to study for an exam, I've always said 4 things are really important. You need a good video course. I think we covered the bases there. A good book. We have the CompTIA books on our website. Those are good choices there, but you could use any Network Plus book. Books teach you in a different way than videos teach you. So that's why I say you really should get both of those. The book will teach you some information in one way. The videos describe and show you the information in a different way. I think it fires synapses differently in our brain. There's something chemically about that the book being this dense text-based device, learning device, and a video-based learning device, I think both of those work very well together. So do both of those. Maybe you do some labs. Z didn't do any labs or didn't mention any labs, but those might be good to do as well. Having a third party sort of prompt you through the idea of doing things at a command prompt, understanding some of these performance-based questions. We have the Cert Master Labs on our website for Network Plus, for example, and they're fantastic. They take you through tons of these. There's a lot of labs in their Network Plus lab, Cert Master Labs. Plus on our website, the Cert Master Labs, the Cert Master Study, which is their book, those are also discounted. Another great advantage. And then the one that really Z talks about, I've done the practice questions and I've gotten pretty good numbers on the practice questions, but am I really ready to take the exam? And I think one of the best ways to tell if you're ready to take the exam, I've said it, well, not only said it before, I said it 5 minutes ago, is the exam objectives. But how do you use the exam objectives to study for an exam? Well, let's just go straight to it. In fact, we'll go to that same section, compare and contrast networking appliances, applications, and functions. And on my screen, I'm going to turn on the annotation functions. I have some annotation functions in my PDF reader. You probably do as well. And I can change those to be different colors. So let's change a color. Let's make it yellow. We'll start with yellow. And let's just say that I'm picking out the things in this list that I'm pretty good at. I know pretty well. Router, I've got pretty well. Switch, firewall, can I explain a firewall to myself or to someone else? Maybe I can work a little bit more on that one. IDS and IPS, yep, I got that one down. Proxy, maybe I don't know proxy all that well. Maybe that's another one I'll put in that middle ground, the yellow list. There are some things here that I really haven't studied at all. For example, I haven't studied anything about quality of service. So on that one, I don't know that I could describe quality of service to anyone. So I just did virtual private network. That's not the one I wanted. But maybe we want quality of service also in this list. Maybe virtual private network we haven't studied very well. We'll mark those as red. And maybe you can mark stuff as green if you really know it. I didn't put that on here by default because I'm hoping at the end of your studies that most of this would be green. But maybe it would work better if we marked it as green only at a psychological level. I got routers down solid. I've got switches down solid. I've got IDS and IPS down really good. I've got SANs down good. I've got access points down good. Maybe that's the way we do it. We highlight the stuff we really know, and then we go back and pick through the ones we don't. Find the strategy that works best for you. Use these bullets. And the reason I mentioned this on this document is that CompTIA sticks to this list pretty much exclusively for the exam. They never seem to deviate out of this scope. They stick to this list like glue. So if you know every single one of these bullets on every single one of these pages, you cannot help but pass this exam. That's how close they stick to this list, and that's how important it is. Now, there are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of topics in this list. So this is not something you can easily skip through in a day. This is why it takes people 2 months, 3 months to study for their Network Plus exam, which, by the way, is perfectly normal. For me, it takes me more than 2 or 3 months. I'm one of those 6-month studiers. I really like to know the information at a very, very, very detailed level, probably more than the exam really requires. And so I tend to overstudy for a lot of things. I don't know if that's surprising or not. If you ask some of my instructors in college, they would say that's a ridiculous statement. He doesn't study at all. Look at these grades. Now I tend to overstudy. So I don't know what happened to me. Did I mature from college until now? I don't think so. I think you can ask anybody. That's not the case. But for some reason, I have this idea. Maybe I feel that it's more important now. Maybe I think these certifications are really an important thing. Maybe I didn't have the same respect for college during that time. Maybe that was founded. I don't know. We'll have to think about that. But that's something I think would be the best way to study, is go through those exam objectives. You've got great numbers on your practice exams. And in my practice exams that I work with, those are about the right numbers you would really work for. Obviously, you'd like 100%. That's what you should be striving towards. But the exam objectives will give you that secondary validation to tell you, here's what you do know, and maybe here's some things you don't know. You can make the decision at that point if you really are ready to take the exam or if you're not. So we'll have to figure out which one works for you. But I think the exam objectives are a great way to give you a barometer as to what you are set for, what you know for this particular exam. Everybody's a little different. Everybody knows a different set of those objectives. Everybody will have a different set of red, yellow, green on their screen. Make sure you go through all of them. The thing I hate to see, and I see it way too often, are people that come back to my site after they've taken the exam and they failed the exam, and they will say in our chat, they asked me this crazy question about dynamic routing, or they asked me this crazy question about administrative distances. How was I supposed to know that they would be asking me a question about administrative distances? I didn't see that one coming. Well, then you didn't look at your exam objectives, because in section 2, network implementation, section 2.1, explain characteristics of routing technologies, administrative distances was specifically listed in there. And they go, what do you mean listed? What are the exam objectives that you speak of? What is this thing you are talking about? So they had no idea this list even existed. And once you show them, here's a list of everything you have to know, they're like, oh, well, okay, now I'll study this and I'll prepare for the second time through. So don't be caught unaware that this doesn't exist. You really should be very familiar with that list. You should be so familiar that if somebody says, oh, what about administrative distances? You almost will go, oh, that's section 2.1. Have you been through that one yet? You start to memorize where those things are. in the exam objectives. Oh yeah, that's section. I know that's in domain 2. It's probably section 2.1, right? And you can look those up. Sure is. Absolutely. Whenever we work through those. So hopefully that's given you some idea of how you can study and be ready for that. And then also be very aware of what those different topics might be. Let's keep going through this list of questions. Again, you can submit a question into this list for me to answer. You can submit that using the link on your screen, professormesser.com/QA. Be a good one to have there. Let's keep going through these questions. There's quite a number to go through. Thank you for sending these, by the way. A lot of information in this. And again, that when I say that it's a popular question, how do I know when I'm ready to take the exam? I've already, in my list that I'm looking at, there were 2 or 3 of these questions that came through, and that was a big one. That was 2 or 3 of them were just about how do I know when I'm ready for my exam? Just so you're aware. Could have been any of you that sent that in, but hopefully I answered 3 of you with one answer. So hopefully that worked out well for the questions that you were asking. Let's talk about renewals. Once you have your certification, or even about CEUs, I mentioned at the end of the first hour, I mentioned how you could earn a 1-hour webinar category CEU. You might want to go back and look at that first hour to learn more about that. Said has sent me, Said has sent me a question. Can you get credit for a CEU while the exam you took is still active, or do you have to wait until the next exam series is out? I passed my 220, 1201, 1202 in May. When can I start getting credits? So when you start, the way that you would earn these CEUs, the way these CEUs would be valid from CompTIA's perspective is you must have already earned a certification. So you've earned your A+, your Network Plus, your Security Plus, or any of these others that you might be renewing. In this case, Sad P says, I passed my 220, 1201, 1202. So you are now A+ certified in May. There you go, A+ certified. You've got it all ready to go. As soon as you were certified, you can start collecting CEUs immediately. So you got 3 years. Whenever you earn a certification, it's a 3-year certification. At the end of 3 years, your certification expires. It goes away. Unless you renew it. And I think many of you would like to renew it. You spent all this time studying for it. The renewal process, relatively easy. You don't have to take the exam again, thankfully. You can do a number of different things to renew your certification. And collecting CEUs is one of those things. CompTIA will not accept a CEU that you earned prior to being certified. So let's say you collected a couple of CEUs in April of April of this year. You said you got certified in May. A month before you earned a couple of CEUs by watching some of my study groups, and I sent you the emails. Those are not valid. Those cannot be used for renewal because you earned them prior to your certification. But as soon as you are there and available, immediately you pass your A+ exam, you can immediately start grabbing CEUs and putting them up on the site and showing that you have the hours to renew the certification. There's also a video that I did. It's on my YouTube channel, how to renew your certification, how to renew your A+, Network Plus, and Security Plus certification in just a few hours. And it's a video that I made to really talk about the value of CertMaster CE. That's CertMaster Continuing Education. It is a computer-based training front end that allows you to renew your certification without collecting CEUs. You don't have to take any other third-party exams. You don't have to go through a training class. You just purchase CertMaster CE, which is only a little bit more than spending money to have the annual maintenance fees. You do that. You go through this program. It's a computer-based training program. It takes you a number of hours. And then when you're done and you've passed every question that is in that, you submit it at the end, it registers you at CompTIA and you're renewed. That's it. That's your renewal. You don't have to take another exam. You don't have to pay any extra fees. There's no maintenance costs. You just send in and take the CertMaster CE and you're now renewed for another 3 years. Not bad. So that's something you have to take the CertMaster CE though of the next version that's coming. So if you passed your A+, SAD passed the A+ in May, you can't take the Cert Master CE from the current version. You have to wait until the next A+ version comes out, in this case, 2 years from now or whenever it's going to be. Then you can take the next Cert Master CE. So there's a lot of different ways to do it. That video I created goes through every process for renewal, and I talk about the advantages and disadvantages for renewing for that particular process. So that might be something to look at as well. Maybe that can give you an idea of where the best way to renew might be. So another good idea to work through that. Let's keep going through the questions that you have. You can submit more questions using the link on your screen, professormesser.com/QA. Let's talk about networking. Let's talk about these pieces of this. This is kind of a very broad question about the industry, and I think it's worth talking about. This is from Jared, who asks, what percentage of the networking scenarios and hands-on networking is still relevant with third-party cloud servers, data centers, and all of the remote working, where they basically cut costs to reduce overhead? Now they're trying to get people to go from working at home to back to the corporate office because Best Buy is now trying to get them back in the office after years of being hybrid so they don't waste office space. I probably read a little bit more into this than Jared was really talking about here. I think Jared may have a few things he would like to talk about regarding working from home and going back into the office. I can empathize with a lot of this because I have worked both in an office and I've worked at home. So I've done both of these. I've also worked neither in an office and neither at home. Most of my work was from that type of scenario where I was both not at home and not in an office. What other option is there? Well, indeed, what other option is there? But let's really talk about the meat of the question, which is, we've talked in this just so far today about SSH into a switch, to do a switch configuration. You've gone through the process of understanding routing tables. You've talked about wireless connectivity. We've talked about 802.1q trunking. Are you ever going to use these things? Because now everything's in the cloud. Now everything isn't even real anymore. It's virtual. It's a software-based switch. It's a software-based router. But in reality, it still has to be networked. Every user that you have in your organization still needs to connect to the network. Every user in your organization is still using an application that communicates across the network. Oh yeah, you're going to be doing tons of networking. Might you not be setting up a physical router in a data center that is owned by the company in your own building? You might not be doing as much of that anymore. Will you be setting up a virtual router in a cloud-based configuration where all of your applications are? Absolutely. Do the same things apply to the cloud-based router as they do the physical router? Almost exactly the same. I've often told people that really the only thing a physical device does is give you that tactile function of plugging in the RJ45 cable and getting the click when it goes into the interface. Everything else is all from the command line. That router could be next to you on your bench. It could be in another building. It could be in another country. So it doesn't matter where the router is located. You'll still have to understand routing technology and dynamic routing and what is the default routes and what are these IP address configurations and how do you calculate and determine where a packet comes in and where it's going. All of that based around the troubleshooting that we've done already, it still applies. It's still there. We did not get rid of the network when we went to the cloud. We did not get rid of the network when we worked from home. We did not get rid of the network when we came back to the office. So it really is one of these scenarios where if you're worried about something going away, we went to the cloud, so therefore we're not doing any network any longer. Nope. We're probably doing more networking than ever because the cloud changed. It made the process of networking much more complex because now instead of having all of our resources in one room in our building, those resources are now spread across the world into different cloud providers located in different cloud data centers located in different countries. Now the process is much more complicated. How do I get people that are in California to connect to the right cloud server that may be located in Dallas, and that cloud server is maybe providing us with a function where we have switches, routers. How do I maintain security of those systems? Much more difficult now that it's in the cloud than it was in our data center. If anything, it's made our job harder. Not gotten rid of it. We now have much more of a requirement to do this job and to do it even better, because now there's much bigger networking requirement than any of this. Applications have become much more complicated. Networks have become much more complicated. And obviously security is ridiculous now. I think the latest Microsoft security update that came out this week, right? That was what, 400 vulnerabilities that were listed, and I think there were 3 0 days listed in the monthly update from Microsoft. It's not getting better. It's getting worse. We've made it much more difficult. Now we throw AI into this, where it's now hunting down every vulnerability known to man. It's made our jobs much more difficult. So no, it's not going away. It's getting harder. It's getting more complex. It's making you more valuable to the organization. The more you know about what's happening in the cloud, the more you know how to network properly and manage it and secure it and do all of these things around these more complex applications, the more valuable of a technical resource you are going to be. And the more valuable you are, the more job possibilities are out there, the better you're going to get paid, and the more upward mobility you're going to have. Just another one of those things to consider. There's plenty of people. If you go to the internet, there's a lot of people out there that will be happy to tell you that the sky is falling and that the world of networking is over and AI is the end for everything. But I think, as we've all seen, there was a lot of hype around what was coming in the future with AI. I think now we're starting to see more of a balanced approach to what AI can do, and perhaps more broadly, what it absolutely cannot do. It certainly cannot do very well. So hopefully it's giving you some perspective for this. I think if you were someone who is looking at networking as a career, I think it's a fantastic place to go. As I've always mentioned, networking connects all of this together. Every single aspect of information technology has some networking component to it. If you're working on databases, huge networking component. If you're working on data centers, huge networking piece of it. Are you working on application security? They're connecting to the network. What about servers? What about email? What about authentication? What about, just go through the list. Every possible job you could have in IT has a network component to it. And in fact, the more you know about the network, the better you will be at doing those types of jobs. I wish we could take every application developer and send them to networking school. I wish they could all get Network Plus certified. It would make our jobs so much better. Wait a second. No, strike that. Do not send them to any networking classes. Make them keep doing what they're doing. That way I'll always have a job. I don't know what I was thinking. Just scratch all of that. We'll edit this out, right? Okay, good. Yeah, just forget that, what I was saying about application developers and networking. We are happy with them creating the applications they're doing now. That way we'll always have a job available to us. It's just the circle of life as it works through there. Something you should at least think about if you're working through the details of it. Let's do some more questions in this list. More questions. The next question on our list, a subnetting question. We need a subnetting question. Not exactly subnetting, more like, how am I going to do this on the exam? This is from Jason, who asks, can I bring the 7-second subnetting chart or the CIDR chart for the exam? Can I bring my phone as a calculator and a translator for the exam? Can I bring pen and paper? What can and can't I bring for the exam? What is an online whiteboard? How should I handle this in an exam? Well, Jason, you've got 700 questions that you'd like to ask. Let's take them one at a time. I think most of these we can really break out. And it's a common question because the exams themselves, especially networking, people see subnetting and they think about calculations and they think about calculators. They think about some automatic calculation tool. Or there's a lot of things to remember and they think, how am I going to write all these things down? So you're not wrong. Can you bring your phone as a calculator and translator? Oh, no. No, your phone can't be anywhere around. In fact, you really can't bring anything into the exam room. So if you're going to an exam center, they literally have lockers that they will take all of your personal belongings, your phone, maybe even your watch, your smart watch. They'll take they'll take anything you have, your wallet. They'll take everything and they'll put it into the locker and they'll lock it up and they'll give you the key. They'll say, when you come out, get your stuff and you can go. But you got to put all this in here for now. You cannot take paper into the exam. You cannot take a pen into the exam. You cannot take anything into that exam room. Now, there are times what they will do, not all the time, but the exam center will provide you with something to write on. Most often, they do not use paper and pencil any longer. They tend to use a whiteboard, like a physical laminated page, and they will give you a dry erase pen. I will bring my own dry erase pen. If you've ever used a dry erase pen at a testing center, it's been squished down. The point of the pen is squished down to a point that you could really only use this to make posters for a football game, because it's just a worthless point at the end of it, and you really can't get any detail out of it. So there have been times when I brought my own dry erase fine-tipped marker and had them approve it at the front desk. They go, oh yeah, you can use that. And they'll let you take it in. Not everybody will. There's some testing centers that are very particular and will not let you take your own pen into the test. But that's just me. I think if I were there, I would allow it. But I'm not. So that's up to the testing center. Check in with them before you go to the testing center if you plan to bring your own dry erase marker. They don't bring anything in. Let you bring anything in. They give you that sheet of paper and the dry erase marker. You take it into the room. You write on it for the exam. When you come out of the room, they erase it right then, and they're ready for the next person to go. So that's why you're not able to take a pen. You're not able to take a pencil. And on the exam, on the part of the exam that you're taking at home, you can't even bring a dry erase marker and a laminated paper. You can't bring any physical writing utensil into the home-based. And that's where you get into the online whiteboard that Jason mentioned. Now, if you're somebody who would like to get a feel for this online whiteboard, you might want to try it. There's a way you can try it before going to the exam. Simply Google remember Google? We can use Google for this. This is the Google, that's the search engine for those not familiar. Type in OnVue, ONVUE. That is the online testing process that is used by CompTIA. CompTIA contracts with Pearson to be able to provide this, and OnVue is the name of that software. And they have search for OnVue whiteboard, and you'll find this page, which is using the whiteboard during your OnVue exam. They explain all of the different features available on the whiteboard. They show you where the button is, where you can start the whiteboard, and you can enter text. You can draw different shapes and lines. You can erase. You can resize the whiteboard around your screen. And here at the bottom, they say you can practice using the whiteboard. If you click that, open up a new window, and here's your whiteboard. This is the whiteboard you would have during the exam, the actual same whiteboard, and you can work with it. By default, it's a text-based front end, and you can type in there, anything you'd like, 8, 16, 32, 64, 128, or vice versa. We can do it in the back. We can also use some of the tools they have here, and you can draw on the screen. You can erase things. You can do different parts of it. The bottom part allows you to draw, have different drawings here. You can erase, you can undo, you can trash the whole thing. So you've got different ways to go about doing this. I think typing it in is probably an easy way. Doing this with a mouse, kind of complicated, not really easy to write on. So you can't really W-R-I-T-E. Can't do it. This is not a good way to work with this. It's much better to type it there at the top. But at least you get some practice with it before you take the exam. That's from go to the Google, go to your favorite search engine. What you want to search for is OnVue whiteboard. OnVue and whiteboard. You search for those two, and I think you're good. Those are the two you want to bring up for this exam. And you'll find that page. You can try it out yourself and see what's there. I think that's a great way to be familiar with what's going to show up on the exam before you actually take the exam. which I think helps with understanding what am I faced with? What is this going to look like? Can I use this in the way that I think? And in fact, you might be able to find a way to really take advantage of this. You only have access to this once the exam starts, however. So there's nothing you can really do to make the process any faster. As far as what you can and cannot bring into the exam, CompTIA has a very big page. Really, I think it's over on the Pearson side that gives you a breakdown of everything you can and cannot bring into the exam. So you have at least choices here on what you can work with. And they do tell you, you cannot have headphones. You cannot use, you cannot have a camera with you. You can't bring your phone into the room. You can have a drink of water if it's in a glass that you can see through, that kind of thing. So they really do spell it out quite nicely. Make sure you're familiar with what the different options might be and what you can and cannot do, because it's all documented on the Pearson VUE website. They really do break it down quite nicely for you. So that's my recommendation. Maybe that'll give you some perspective, and not a lot of people know you can play around with the whiteboard before even going in the room. That might be something that can give you at least a perspective of whether you're able to use it that way or not. I think that may be a good way to consider it. Let's keep going through this list. How are we doing on time? We're doing great on time. Let's see what else we have in this list of things you have sent to me. Thank you. So let's talk about the industry. Let's talk about jobs. Let's talk about what certifications are valuable, what's good or what's bad about any of this. And here's a note from Jared. Jared asks, I'm wondering how valuable the Network Plus is and whether or not it's worth it when I'm basically doing a sideways transition rather than a direct to IT, having experienced many layoffs, making a side shift to IT related versus the risk of layoffs every economic downturn. There's a lot in here, Jared. You got a lot of thoughts that we're working through, but it really does talk about where do you put your efforts into earning a credential, or should you even bother getting an IT industry certification? And indeed, there's a good argument to be made either side on whether Network Plus would be good or Network Plus would be bad. A Plus would be good, A Plus would be bad. CCNA would be good, CCNA would be bad. Red Hat would be good, Red Hat would be... You can, of course, ask these questions constantly, and you really should. I think there are two different schools of thought when it comes to certifications. The primary school of thought is that certifications show that you have a basic level of knowledge in a particular subject area. Now, a lot of people will complain online that these certifications aren't worth anything because you don't have any experience behind them yet. That's a different category of things that you need to work on. But having experience does not in any way make better or worse the idea of an IT industry certification. And that's because employers want to see both of these things. They don't care one or the other. When they put together a job description, the job description has in it how much experience they would like to see from you, what type of industry certifications they would like to see from you, what type of knowledge you have in networking and computing, in technologies and applications, in different aspects of that particular job. And they list it out for you. They tell you if it's valuable. The value of a certification is based on what you plan on doing with it. The value of a certification isn't the fact that the certification exists or that you even have it. It's once you have it, what are you doing with it? And I think that most people think about certifications in the perspective of a job hunt, just as Jared does in this example. And this is where you really need to look through the job postings and see, is this employer looking for a certification? Are they looking for formal education? What type of experience are they hoping to see from me? And we need to document that. It might even be good to create a spreadsheet of every available job that applies to you in your particular area. And then you can document, here's what they want from a formal education perspective. If they're looking for an industry certification, what certs do they want? Oh, they want a Network Plus. They want a Security Plus. They want Red Hat. They want Amazon. They want CCNA. You'll be able to see what the employer would like you to have. Then you also have this other list of things. The employer says, we also want you to be knowledgeable in these topics, which may or may not have a certification associated with them. All of these work together. There are some employers that they don't care if you have a certification. They don't care if you have experience. They're ready to hire you. Now, they put that standard in place because they want people that are right out of school. They know you're not going to have experience. They know you're not going to have an industry certification, or they may be thinking, we would prefer hiring somebody who doesn't have experience and doesn't have a certification because they're less expensive to us. This is one where their strategy is hire people that don't know anything. We will train them as they go. And then and once they're on board, now they have the knowledge that we would like them to have. And in the meantime, we didn't have to pay them as much as we would pay someone who has experience. We don't have to pay them as much as someone who already has those industry certifications. Sneaky, but that's a good strategy. It's not a bad business model. Some organizations don't have time for that though. They're making real money. They've got real projects. They have real things that need to get done. And they have very detailed job postings that say, we want somebody that has a 4-year degree. We want somebody that has earned their Network Plus certification. And we want somebody familiar with this networking technology, whatever it happens to be. Okay, well, they're in that particular scenario, Network Plus, pretty valuable because the employer specifically listed that in the job posting. So that's where the value of a certification is based on what I do with it. If nobody in your area is asking for Network Plus, the Network Plus is not going to be as valuable to you as perhaps a different credential. But if everybody in your area is asking about Network Plus, the value of the certification goes through the roof. So there's no way that any one person can answer how valuable Network Plus is, because we don't know what you plan to do with that certification, and we don't know what employers in your area are looking for. So there's your challenge. There's the thing you're trying to do, is try to find out what the different options might be for you given a certification. And I would highly recommend you go through that process of really doing the research. Do that research prior to making a decision on what certification you plan on getting. There are times when I find people that come to our site and they go, well, I went and got my Security Plus, I went and got my Network Plus, and now I looked at jobs in my area and nobody's asking for these certs. So what good are they? Well, I can't really argue with that. I have to agree with you. What good from a job perspective is that really valuable to you? Probably is not as valuable as another credential might have been, but you should have looked prior to taking those for that piece of it. However, take the job piece out of the equation just for a moment. I think the vast majority of people getting certifications are getting this as something to help get that job, but let's put that to the side for the moment. The other thing that IT certifications give you is knowledge. When you learn about networking is the same whether you're working in a Cisco environment, a Ubiquiti environment, a Juniper environment, a Palo Alto Networks environment, whatever it happens to be. If you're working with switches and you're working with routers and you're working with protocols, it's all the same regardless. The only differences might be the process for configuring spanning tree on a Cisco switch is slightly different than the process of configuring spanning tree on a layer 2 firewall, which is slightly different than configuring spanning tree on a third-party access point. But it's all the same terminology. It's all the same standard. And in many cases, it's very familiar when configuring this on all of those platforms. So understanding the foundation of networking applies across the board, regardless of what manufacturer's equipment you're using, regardless of whether it's a switch or a router or a proxy or an access point or whatever it is. Having that knowledge in your brain allows you to apply it more towards it's kind of a larger scale view of what's happening on the wire. And once you can visualize what's happening on the wire and you know how that visualization, how that data affects a switch, how that data affects a router, how it affects an access point, that's the value. That personal knowledge of networking takes you much farther down the road than a single certification. The things I learned about Windows when I started my career and earned my, at the time, Microsoft had the MCSE. I got my MCSE, which taught me about Windows permissions. It taught me about NTFS. It taught me about Active Directory. It taught me about networking in Windows. It talked about the protocols used in Windows. You effectively become very knowledgeable in that single operating system, which is great. That's what you want. But if you're someone who is kind of working through understanding how am I going to know what to do with this switch or with this router 5 years from now? Well, you've got the knowledge. You learned it when you went through understanding Network Plus. And I think that's where we sort of miss the opportunity. We sort of miss that point because we're so focused on the job, we forget there is kind of an inherent value in IT certifications because now you've learned something. And you'll be able to take that knowledge with you the rest of your career. The things I learned about Windows and all of those Windows technologies a few years ago, if you will, that knowledge now still applies to the most recent version of Windows operating system, Windows 11 and Windows Server. So even though it was knowledge that I went through just to earn a certification, that certification is no longer valid. Microsoft doesn't even offer that certification anymore. You can't even get that certification now if you wanted to. Doesn't matter. I still got the knowledge. So I can still apply all of those. So when I started working at Palo Alto Networks, which you would think next generation firewalls, you need to understand configuring layer 3, layer 2, layer 1, or virtual wire, as they call it in the world of Palo Alto Networks. You have to understand firewalling. You have to understand the internals of the firewall, how to configure the IPS functionality, understand IPsec connectivity, understand how to integrate this with the other systems that are in place. But here's the part that was great. They said, and you have to configure this firewall to integrate with Active Directory. Do you know anything about Active Directory? Like, oh, do I? I go back with Active Directory back to those days of earning my MCSE and understanding about the forest and connecting multiple Active Directory trees together and the rights and the permissions. And okay, we got it. Got it. Because you're going to be setting up firewalls to integrate with the Active Directory server so that you can create firewall rules that are based on a group inside Active Directory. Great. No problem. I'm very familiar. They go, well, you need to be able to type this in and find the Active Directory server. Like, yep, I know how to do that. I know how to do an NS lookup and find that. That's easy. And then you need to configure an LDAP connection into the Active Directory. Yep, I've done that. Yep, that's easy. I got it. Like, oh, we don't have to train you on any of this. You already know those things. So having that knowledge back in the day, if you will, and being able to apply that knowledge in a modern form was given to me because I went through a certification, which to this day, no employer is looking for. No employer would hire me because I have a Microsoft MCSE. Nobody cares anymore. But the knowledge I earned, I have used throughout my career and continue to use throughout my career because I was able to learn that with certs. So I know we focus a lot on layoffs and what the current job market is and what we're doing with certifications now. But keep in mind that these certifications are certifications that you're going to use that knowledge for the rest of your career. It will still be, I think for most of your certifications, it would still be valuable. Now, granted, I did get ATM certified back in the day. That's asynchronous transfer mode, a topology type that is no longer being used. I have a certification in FIDI. I said FIDI, not him. It's a different FIDI. But I knew FIDI well before you knew FIDI. I did. We don't use that topology any longer, but I got certified in it. But a good example of how these technologies you learn, even though that technology is not around anymore, it taught me about fiber. It taught me about being able to connect the multi-mode and standard mode and how you would configure a ring-based network and redundancy and topology changes. And it all applies to the modern world, even though it doesn't exist any longer. So don't worry so much about, am I doing this the right way? Do your homework first. Get a good understanding of what jobs are available in your area. Get a good understanding about how these jobs are being offered and what people are looking for. That's certainly important. But don't forget that whatever decision you make about certifications, that's knowledge you'll be able to use the rest of your career. Now, there was part of that question that did talk about layoffs in the industry and downturns and the world is ending and we're never going to have another technical job again. Well, I think we're starting to see a change there as well. A lot of large technology companies fired a lot of people a year and a half ago. Fired a lot of them, not because they didn't need them, not because they weren't doing a good job, not because they didn't think that they were valuable to the company, but they needed their salary. They needed their money. They didn't have enough money to build out this suddenly brand new AI infrastructure. And they had to get the cash from somewhere. And they got the cash by firing people and using the money they would have paid those people to buy equipment and build out their AI infrastructure. Some of them did a good job at doing that and might actually have products they could sell. Not a lot of them did. Many of them have kind of right-sized it now and realized, oh, that didn't turn out exactly the way we were expecting. Let's now best fit what AI can really do. Now that we have a much better understanding of it, and we're just not running after whatever the next thing is, maybe we should start hiring people back again to do these jobs that nobody's doing for us. So we're starting to see trends change most recently. I'm seeing a lot more recruiters reaching out. That's how I know more projects are going on. I'm seeing more companies open their job posts for networking and technology jobs. So nothing stopped. The world kept moving. The jobs are still there. Employers are now hiring people back. I don't think they should have fired people to begin with, but I'm not in charge of these big companies. So now they're hiring people back, which I'm sure maybe it's the same people, maybe it's different folks. But this is one of those where you have to kind of follow the trends in the industry. This is not the first time this industry has done this by far. Well, I've gone through a number of these cycles up and down where we're hiring everybody, we're firing everybody. We're hiring everybody, we're firing everybody. We're firing everybody, firing it. It's just a circle of life. It's just the way it works in this industry, really most industries. This is not unique to information technology in any way. But we're paid really well in these jobs. And so when you need money, we're often the first ones you get rid of because there's a lot of cash there just waiting for you to leave so they can use that cash for something else. Is that ethical? I don't know about that, but it certainly is one way that companies can change the resources they have available to themselves and maybe find some cash that they can apply to different projects. It's a weird world we live in from that perspective. My approach through this entire thing, through what we have most recently seen with the downturn and now starting to see with a slight upturn, and maybe we got some momentum there. What our approach has always been is technology is not going away. As much as everybody's screaming about AI is changing the world and we're not going to have any jobs anymore and we're going to have to find some way to eat and how are we going to get food? It didn't turn out to be quite as dire as we first imagined it might be, like most things. So now that we've realized, oh, we really do need technologists, we still have networks, we still have cloud-based connectivity. And by the way, who's going to set up and run the AI applications and make sure that those continue to run? Who's going to protect the data? Who's going to network them all together? Who's going to set up the systems and the servers to communicate with each other? That would be you. So my approach has been, let's keep doing this. Even though there's a bit of an economic downturn, it's going to come back because it always does. And we need to be ready as soon as the downturn moves our direction. Now, fortunately, here in the world of A+, Network Plus, Security Plus, and sort of the CompTIA side of things, we've always been information technology. In many ways, it's really good that we're not on the computer science side right now. When you have an automated engine that's able to create its own code, you certainly don't want to be competing with that. Well, in IT, we don't create code. We're not application developers. We might write some scripts, but quite honestly, we could all do that ourselves. We don't need AI to give us a script. We could maybe ask for one, but you can really do that yourself. That's, after all, what we've been doing for the past 30 years, is writing our own scripts. Nothing, automation and orchestration, it's nothing new for us. We've been doing it forever. Heck, cloud computing probably set us up nicely for that. That's when all of those cloud systems became API enabled, and we created scripts. Python itself became popular just because we're able to manage these cloud-based services from any operating system. It was really a great way to start scripting, and that became sort of its own self. Python became its own entity thanks to cloud computing. So that's another example of how it's not really about what's happening in the industry. It's more about what's happening with you. How can we get you ready to take advantage of whatever's going to be next? That's the important part. It's never going to be the case where we're just going to give up on technology. Our industry, our world, forget the industry, the world is not ready for that. So we still need this technology. We're using it even more than ever. If anything, AI has shown us that we need more technology, apparently, in our industry. Now, at some point, maybe we'll get tired of it. We'll all start screaming and we'll run for the hills. And we'll wait until that happens. But in the meantime, I need my phone. I need the data center. I need the access to the cloud. We need to have all of these available, and we need to know how it works so that we can first design it, implement it, and perhaps even more importantly, troubleshoot it. Those people will always be needed. And by the way, those people, that's you. That's who I'm talking to. So that's why we do what we do here. We want to prepare you the best we can so that when those opportunities come along, you are ready. When these opportunities are happening, that's not the time when somebody says, we need somebody very familiar with this networking capability. That's not the time where you think to yourself, well, maybe I should get Network Plus certified. Maybe I should learn more about networks. No. You needed to learn all of that before the opportunity showed up so that you could say, oh, I know that. I'm ready to go. Should I start tomorrow? I'll be there at 8. That's what we want to prepare you for. The jobs are out there. Granted, it's a challenging time in the industry. It's a challenging time for technology, but we're seeing the trends changing, and we want to get ready for this. By the end of the year, maybe it'll be a very different place that we're in. From a job perspective, people will really start hiring. And what's the next one going to be? We went through virtualization. Then we went through cloud computing. We just made it through the ATM world, or made it through the AI world. I'm already trying to put ATM on it. I made it through AI. There's going to be another one. There will. And then after that, there will be another one after that one. What is that new technology going to be? What is that trend going to be? What is the next exciting innovation in technology going to be? We don't know, but you need to be ready for it so that when that comes along, you can become an expert in that area. But the only way to become an expert in that area is if you have the foundation in place to be able to learn those things. That's hopefully what we're able to provide, at least a piece of that for you. We want to prepare you with the skills, the knowledge, and the information you need to not only prove to yourself that you know this technology, but prove to employers that you need this technology. And that's really our focus, is to get you that job or that next better job in information technology to make all the difference. Well, we're after the top of the hour. I think that's probably a good place to end it for today, but I sure appreciate you being here. That first hour is always fun. I liked your knowledge of the network and of VLANs and of 802.1q. And you surprise me sometimes in all the things that we need to know about these technologies. And it's always good to see that we're on point. We're understanding exactly what Network Plus is going to need from us. So thank you for being here in that first hour. And thank you for your questions in the second hour. We always get such interesting, thoughtful questions that you have submitted, and we're able to really talk all around some of these problems in a way that we're just not able to do when we're doing QA. So it's always nice as well. If you enjoyed this video, it would sure help us a lot if you could give it a thumbs up, something you can do for free that really does help us a lot in the world of YouTube. There's a reason all of these YouTube folks always say, please give us a thumbs up. And if you haven't subscribed to our channel, that also helps as well. We sure appreciate your ongoing support there. Thank you so much for joining us. We sure appreciate you being here. We'll see you next time on the Network Plus Study Group. Thanks, everybody.